Hello. Apologies for slightly late start. I will formally open this special meeting of Cabinet held on Monday, the 10th of November, 6 o'clock in the Town Hall. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Lubna Arshad, and also Councillor Ed Turner, but thank you very much for joining us online, Ed. And hopefully we can allow you to make your contributions, even if for annoying reasons your presence online doesn't count. So thank you. Have we got any declarations of interest? None. I'm not seeing any. We have no addresses by members of the public or from councillors, but we do have a report from Scrutiny Committee. So Alex, over to you.
Thank you very much. So we convened a special meeting of the Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of November to consider the one item that is also before Cabinet today. During the discussions in Scrutiny, there were a number of representations made by members, particularly around the importance of representation and a democratic voice, and particular concern for how the model of governance that comes out of this will proceed in terms of its relationship to the mayoral strategic authority. And I think there was a general concern on the Scrutiny Committee that we didn't want to see a situation where Oxford was left without a voice in a future authority. There were also discussions around the importance of placemaking and how any prospective free unitary authority would undertake steps to make sure that those parts of the new authority that weren't within Oxford would make sure they were properly represented. From our discussion, we broadly came to just one recommendation, which was that the free unitary proposal is put forward to government. We, as a committee, think that it would be extremely good for government to have this proposal before them. I think that probably much sums it up for me, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Brown, Caroline, Mish, and every other officer who gave their time. It was an hour and a half discussion at Scrutiny, and I think it was very, very beneficial to have those questions answered. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. I thought it was a really good discussion, lots of really good questions, and obviously I was pleased with the outcome and the fact that there was a unanimous recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee to support the proposal. It was that was very welcome, and I also welcomed the mention of the fact that there had been really good engagement. I think there has been on the proposals again in a cross-party way. So that was very good to hear that people had appreciated that. Great. Okay. Well, we have our one item on the agenda, so let us move to that item, and it is a report in my name, so I will present it. So thank you very much to Scrutiny, but we will now move on to that report. I think probably most people in this room have had quite a lot to do with it over the last few months. Possibly not quite as much as some of us, but Mish, Caroline, myself. But it has been a really fantastic piece of work, and I really want to start off by saying a huge thank you to all the council officers who have participated in this, because quite apart from those who have been most responsible in terms of driving this project forward and writing this report, there has been a huge number of contributions from across the council. This is built on the experiences and the work of lots and lots of people from lots of different services. And again, it has been a really fantastic piece of work. So obviously in front of us today, we've actually got 3 LGR proposals. There are the two unitary authority proposal, the 1 unitary authority proposal, and our 3 unitary authority proposal. And we are being asked to note and consider all 3, but also to agree specifically our preferred LGR proposal to go forward. So I'm going to focus not so much on the other 2 proposals, but on our proposal. And I think it's important to say that this is a really key moment in the history of our city, because it's not very often you get the chance to completely reorganise local government. And we have been given quite a blank slate by government on this particular occasion in terms of what their requirements are for us or from us. And so I think it's really important to do what I believe we have done, which is start from the premise of what would be best for our city. What, if we are looking forward for the next 50 years, would be the best way of organising local government for our city. And that, I believe, is what we have done in terms of putting together our bid. So I am happy that the bid that we have put forward is the best one for the future of our city, for making sure that we have a city that works, a city that can house people, a city that it has got a strong economy, and one where local residents still have a voice and have the closest possible voice compared to the other proposals as well. But importantly, our proposal isn't just about Greater Oxford, it is also about making sure that all of those things are also true for the other two areas which are part of Oxfordshire. So the Ridgeway Authority and also the Northern Oxfordshire Authority. And interestingly, resident surveys found that that is something that people across the entire geography welcomed, the idea of having more local government and a bigger voice in their local authorities. And also recognising that urban and rural areas had really very different needs and different requirements, and would be better represented by different unitary authorities. So the bid is a very detailed one. It has got obviously a huge amount of work that's gone into it in terms of how we might work in the future, how we can transform services, how we would make sure that local voices are heard, and that democracy is at the heart of what we're doing in terms of keeping local wards as small as possible, and to try and make sure that people can know their local representatives and make their voices heard. And also, of course, as Alex referenced from scrutiny, making sure that Oxford has a voice on any future mayoral strategic authority, and that we're not just part of a sort of enormous rural voice which would dominate for the whole of Oxfordshire. I'm going to stop there because I think that's just a sort of introduction as to how we got here. But I think that both Caroline and Mish might have further things to say about some of the detail that's actually in our proposals. So I'm going to hand over to you first, Caroline.
Thank you, and I'll try not to repeat too much what you've said. I think just in addition, as you said, as you can see from the rather large pile of paper in front of us, the work on each of the three options that have come forward required to meet a set of criteria set out in the guidance from government, which as and the others do seek to do. So that is, demonstrating against those criteria technical work to evidence that the three unitaries we're proposing will be financially viable and sustainable, to work through analysis around the transition costs and the expected efficiency savings, but also address the other criteria around how this would form sensible economic areas, meet the criteria around housing or contribute to housing supply, deliver high quality services, and support devolution. So a great deal of work has gone into that, both from council's officers and also commissioned technical expertise from consultants where we needed to provide that evidence. So we believe that they are addressed in the proposal. I think it is worth saying in the guidelines that around the size of authorities, the initial guidance that came out mentioned a figure of 500,000, but made it clear that there could be exceptions to that, but you have to make the case. And so we've been very conscious in developing our proposals that we did need to make that case, not just for Greater Oxford, but for the other two unitaries that we're proposing. However, I think, as you're saying, it's not just a technical exercise. Well, LGR is not just a technical exercise. We think it's really important that we do take this opportunity to think about what sort of councils and local government in future can actually respond effectively and be seen to respond effectively to the major challenges which people are facing. And therefore a large element of our case and our proposal is based around how we meet the needs and support the needs of our local economy and deliver the housing that we know the area so badly needs. So we think our exceptional case is really strong based on that element of our proposal. There's also, I think, a really important opportunity to shift the dial towards a more preventative approach to public services. I know personally from work and meetings with health services and social care services just how under strain all of those are. We try very hard to put emphasis on community-based prevention-focused solutions. It's incredibly difficult, and I think there's a really important part of the consideration here about how we shift towards actually being able to affect some of those long-term wider determinants and drivers of inequality that we face. That's probably all I want to say, rather than getting into lots of technical detail, but Mish, you might have a couple of points to add.
Just two, thank you. So first would be around the linkage with devolution, and I think it's important as well that the three unitaries proposal is seen in the context of already now advanced plans to submit an expression of interest to government for a Thames Valley Mayoral Strategic Authority, and I think that itself then puts into context the whole question about scale of local authorities and the opportunity to have something which is more place-based and relates to particular areas rather than the need for large strategic councils underneath an already strategic authority. But then there's also, as the leader said, the need for a voice for Oxford, but also the need for a voice for growth in what is, after all, the very clear agenda set by government to go for growth, and that is essentially what this proposal is all about. And then just to touch on the work that was done by a lot of colleagues and by a number of members as well in terms of the engagement. And we've looked at the scale of the engagement work that has been done by the other councils in terms of their proposals. We think that we stand up very well in terms of the whole breadth with the public, with stakeholders, with statutory stakeholders as well, MPs and the health and police and fire authorities. So it's been well communicated. We think that there's a high level of a sort of understanding and engagement we've had back.
Thank you very much, and I would certainly agree with that. I mean, I've personally been involved in a huge number of meetings, but it pales as to nothing to what you and Caroline and others have done. So thank you very much again for that. But it has been important in informing our proposal as we have gone through the process of putting it together, to make sure that we have engaged with businesses, with residents, with key local stakeholders such as our MPs, and we have spoken to every MP across the entire geography of our proposals, and I think that has been very important as well in terms of understanding their concerns and hopefully trying to address some of them. Okay, I am going to open it for questions and comments. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really welcome the government initiative to move towards unitary councils. I think that'll be really welcome. I think it will really help residents know who is responsible for what and who to hold accountable, rather than the situation we have at the moment where there's a lot of confusion between the city and the county, and issues getting, falling between the gaps. But the issue of the geography is absolutely critical. And, not just as Oxford City Councillor, but as someone born and raised in this city, I just find it incredible that any prospect of the city of Oxford not having its own distinctive voice in local government and being able to run its own affairs just is, just an unthinkable thing. So, the 3 unitary proposal is absolutely the way to go. And I think that manifests itself in terms of the way people in Oxford like to do things, the way they want things run, and that being different to how things are done in rural Oxfordshire. We see that right across the council. We see that in the way we deliver services in terms of the Oxford model, which there isn't comparative for organisations elsewhere. We see it in our approach to housing, both in the fact that we own our own council housing when the other district councils don't. We see it in our approach to the private rented sector as well, and the regulations that we have, the licensing schemes we have, which don't exist elsewhere. You can see it in our investment in homelessness services, in rough sleeping, the investment in our community centres, in our advice centres, in our approach to leisure provision, which we make sure is really inclusive. So all those things matter. I think they matter to Oxford people, and all of that is at risk with any proposal other than the 3 unitary model. So I'm really pleased to be voting for this evening, and I hope that that's the one the government goes for.
Yeah. Thank you, Linda. Ed, and then Anna.
Thanks, Susan. Apologies if there's a bit of background noise. I hope this is audible. 3 very quick points, if it is. One is that I think ours is the only bit which recognises an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is about the remarkable possibilities for growth, which have recently been recognised also by government with the Cowie Branch Line decision, with the Ellison Institute investment, and things which can be achieved in Oxford and around Oxford, which can't be achieved anywhere else in the country or even in the world. And I think we really reflect that ambition in this bid. But the related challenge as well is around the housing crisis, and not just in the county, particularly the single county unitary bid, but some of the commentary, some of the political commentary from others. I don't think they get how dramatic the housing crisis is and how essential it is to address it. So, and I think there's a real risk if our bid weren't to be agreed, particularly if there was to be a unitary county, more families being condemned to spending extending periods in temporary accommodation and the like. So, I think there's opportunities and there are challenges there. The second thing I wanted to say was I wanted to thank our senior officer team for doing so well in compartmentalising this so it hasn't disrupted the wider workings of the council, which is really upsetting for anyone that works in local government. I think they've done a really, really good job in keeping things on an even keel and professional, and that's really, really important for our organisation. So thank you, not just for the hard work in developing bid, which is a really strong bid, but also keeping things on the road. And certainly, Susan, you've been very modest, but I know what a shift you've put in personally, talking to anyone that will listen, probably quite a few who don't want to listen. An awful lot of engagement, really heroic effort. And I'd also just want to put that on record that I'm certainly very, very grateful for what you've done there.
Thank you very much, Ed. That's very kind. I have Anna next, and then Alex, and then Nigel.
Okay. So a lot of my politics just boils down to housing, really. The lack of it causes many of the problems we have in this city today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the green belt, which weirdly has not come up yet. So personally, you know, I feel like certainly around Oxford, it's had its day. It's had 70 years of some really very good PR, but I think it needs to come to an end. You know, the status quo, which we currently have, obviously, status quo of chucking up housing 5 miles from the city boundary, so everybody can, struggle into work, usually by car, is just not really where we need to be anymore. You know, be it environmentally, be it public health reasons, be it just saving thousands of people an awful commute. Also, cities are special. They are greater than the sum of their parts, and especially this city. And yes, as Linda has already said, they should be in control of their own destiny. This is the only plan being put forward that does that. It will finally give Oxford control over its housing need. And it's the only plan that means it can sustainably grow with dense housing along its boundaries, rather than sprawling in suburbs 5 miles from it. Finally, I love this city. I consider it a great pleasure, a great privilege to be able to live here while many cannot afford to. I already think Oxford's pretty great, actually, but I think it can be greater, and this is the plan to deliver that.
Thanks, Anna. I think 5 miles feels optimistic, but yeah. Alex.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for all their work on this, which has been very substantial. Few things came to mind, including a new one, which came to mind gazing at the Oxford Mail over my breakfast this morning. The starting point now, and I'm going back, I don't know if he's still here, yes, he possibly is. Alex from Scrutiny, I'm sure would have said the same thing in the discussion in Scrutiny. That one of the key messages that brings us together here in Oxford, irrespective of our political label, is we all listen to what our voters tell us, which is that they want councils and they want councillors as close to them as possible. And so issues around size of an authority, scale of an authority, and accountability matters. Thinking about the comparison of the three options that are in front of us, ours with 3 unitaries is the 3 smallest authorities. I think that is a good thing. I think that is an inherently correct thing to be looking at, not looking at authorities which have 80, 100 elected members and a population of close to 1 million, where there's going to be a huge disconnection between ordinary people and ordinary councillors. And the consequence will be councillors will have to be full-time, which means it will exclude huge swathes of the population, people in jobs, people with all sorts of pressures on their time, which I think is an inherently bad thing. Also helping to confirm my view that this is a bad thing is research that has been done by University of Oxford, academics in the Blavatnik in particular, which provides absolutely compelling evidence, which many of us have thought was true, but we didn't have the nous to be able to prove it, that large organisations aren't as efficient as they are made out to be on paper. In fact, all the evidence, whether it's public sector or private sector, points to the fact that large organisations can be markedly less efficient, that transformations to create big organisation creates bloated and ineffective organisations. And you only have to look at other local government reorganisations that have happened over the last 10 years to be able to draw that conclusion. But the thing that jumped out to me, and I mean, if the person responsible for it wishes to claim he didn't say it, but there we are. In the Oxford Mail's coverage of local government reorganisation today, there's an elected member, an MP in Oxfordshire, who said, as a county, our problem is Oxford. And I think that points to a whole range of things which indicate why the proposal that we as a council are putting forward is the right option to take. I think as the leader said, as others have said, there are differences between different parts of Oxfordshire and indeed West Berkshire, which are included within this. And the notion that there is some big universal authority which can cover all these areas and represent everything equally. But what's also quite clear is that's not actually what's behind things like single unitaries. It's to try and not have to deal with Oxford. It's to be able to find something sufficiently big enough that the issues in Oxford can be ignored. And those issues are really important. And it made me think, reflecting on conversations I had in the consultation session I did, which was in Banbury, and chatting to people in the shopping centre at Banbury about the issues facing us in Oxford, the issues facing them in Banbury, how they were different, and how it was down to us to deal with them. And that was something that landed universally well. Banbury problems, North Oxfordshire problems, yeah, we should be dealing with those. Oxford problems, yeah, you should be dealing with those. And that, I think, is fundamental and points to the importance of having small representative or authorities. So what is the problem? It's been touched on by Anna already. The problem is, and we can trace it back, that if we go back to the 1980s, early 90s, we look at what was called the county towns policy. The notion that, first of all, there would be no need for any housing in Oxford. And it could, if it was going to have to happen, it would have to happen somewhere else. More to the point that growth was not going to happen in Oxford. There had been this unfortunate error since the 1920s of a car factory, but it was in decline, and then everything could return to what it ought to be, which is some dreaming spires and a few attractive houses around it. And this is exactly the issue that Cambridge had to face up to, because this was exactly what the Cambridge local plan said about it in the early 1950s. It's just that by the early 60s, they realised that this was a terrible error, and they changed it in Oxfordshire, perhaps slightly longer to grasp this rather key point, that you cannot magic away growth from places like Oxford, like Cambridge, like Boston in the United States, whatever you want to pick. This growth will happen. The thinking has to be about how you're going to handle it. And if anyone has any doubts about that, the fact that we had at the same time as a Cowley branch line announcement, same day, the announcement by the Ellison investment of £10 billion, the single biggest investment in this country's economy ever. And it's in Oxford. That's a big deal. So what does that then do? As Anna said, as Linda has said, it means there is a housing issue. And it's not a small issue, it is a colossal issue which we need to deal with. And that issue is that we need to provide not a few hundred houses here and there, but tens of thousands of houses. That is the shortfall. So what I thought was helpful was the way in which the report, and I can't remember whether it was in the report, which appendix it's in. There are so many appendices, I lost track slightly. But looking at the issue of what these three options would do in terms of making it possible to address the need for housing, which will come because there will be economic growth in Oxford. The two unitary position will mean that all Oxford's housing need need to be met by a body which has minimal control over the Greenbelt, because the Greenbelt will be in a different authority. And therefore that will mean that not 5 miles away, but rather further, all that housing need would have to be met. Struggle to meet it in Banbury, but Bicester, maybe, Witney, maybe, Carterton, maybe. You know, so all the housing which should be on the vicinity of Oxford, so that people who have jobs here, have families here, or have communities here, will be taken further afield. Similarly, the single unitary authority, because it will have planning control over the entire county, will not, even if it ever had the inclination, and it says quite clearly that they do not have the inclination to address the Greenbelt issue, that all the development would happen somehow beyond. So housing need for Oxford, Henley, Tame, you know, take your pick, but where it isn't is Oxford. So the advantage of what we have is a proposal where Oxford, the current city, and its Greenbelt are going to be under the same organisation's control. So what that does is it means the housing need the problem and the solution, the need to put it somewhere close to Oxford, are under control of the same authority for the first time since housing really expanded to the edge of what were the city's boundaries. So what that then has is not, as a county, our problem is Oxford. What it does is something rather more positive, I think, which is says, yes, we have a problem. We're a fast growing city, and that has implications, and those implications are really, really very difficult for far too many of our fellow citizens here in this city, in our communities. But whoever us turns out to be in the Greater Oxford, or whatever one calls it, unitary, it will be our problem to fix. And I think that is fundamental to why we should be supporting this.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And I have to say, I think if you do think that as a county, Oxford is your problem, then you should definitely be supporting the 3 unitary option, because then Oxford gets to sort out its own problems, but also crucially, the other areas are able to focus on their problems too. Because obviously the flip side of Oxford sorting out its own housing problem is that the other authorities don't have to sort out our housing problem and can instead sort out their own. So actually, when they're talking about addressing their housing need for, again, the first time in many, many years, they can actually focus on what actually their housing need is and plan accordingly. Right, I saw Nigel next.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't want to repeat everything everyone else has said, but I do like the strap line. Can I say that? I do think we have managed to weave together people, prosperity, and community in a very clever way, and you know, those are the 3 big buckets of objectives, if you like, from the 3 unitary authority proposal in particular. I want to build a little bit on what Alex said about sort of public confidence in small organisations and less confidence in large organisations. That is definitely true. There's definitely a lot of research which backs it up, and I am really worried about the democratic deficit that would arise from a single unitary authority, not least because based on its current record of providing services, the current county across the whole of the county geography, that democratic deficit has increased significantly in the last few years as it has tried to tackle some very difficult and complicated issues. So why would I then have confidence that asked to do some very difficult things around housing or growth or prosperity, which all have trade-offs in them, why would I have confidence that it would manage to, as it were, close that democratic deficit when facing those sort of issues? I don't really think there's any evidence for that. Second issue for me is about prosperity and the trickle-down importance of it, really. And I think, again, a single unitary authority would have the time and the focus and the energy to make sure that in a boom Klondike type Oxford, which is where we are at the moment, that there would be a fair chance that some of those least advantaged in the city would benefit from that prosperity and that growth, because there would be a focus upon it, which you do not, again, get with large geographies, because they just do not have the energy and the time to do that. And in particular, I'm struck by, you know, the statistics about the different life expectations of the different parts of the city, which is something which we still have to conquer and do something about, and also about the ethnic makeup of this city, which is so different from anything in the rest of the county, completely different, and therefore there are special issues and special issues to tackle that again, a narrow focused geography has a better chance of succeeding in than a very large amorphous 1 million county population. And then the third issue is around community, and it's community building, literally building, as Alex says, going back to what we've been talking about, which is housing, but also a sense of being together and a sense of being cohesive and a sense of being tolerant. And again, I think there's a much better chance of that happening in a smaller authority which is focused upon the city and the surrounding area, rather than this large, say, amorphous, like I keep on describing it, a proposal for a county with even more responsibilities than it has now. So for all those reasons, it feels it goes with the grain of the times, and it goes with the grain of what the city needs. It will make sure the city does well, not just for itself, ultimately, but for the nation. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in this city which is much bigger than the city. I mean, you saw the vaccine story in COVID. there are a million stories, not a million, but there are many stories in the city in the years ahead that have the potential to be as important for the United Kingdom. And therefore, we can't afford to waste that opportunity. We have to make sure it has the focus that a city plus authority would bring, Greater Oxford Authority would bring. And therefore, I don't want to waste that. I don't want to sacrifice those opportunities, not just for the city, but for the whole country. And therefore, all those reasons, I'm very, very supportive of the 3 unitary authority proposal. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Joe.
Thank you very much. I also want to repeat what my previous speakers have said, but I just want to add my many thanks to you, Susan, for the work that you have done, Caroline, Mish, and all the team. This has been a lot of work, and thank you so much for coming to this ending. I'm also going to support the Greater Oxford. Probably I'll look at it on the financial and Oxford model point of view. We are one of the few authorities that actually produce the balanced budget, or other local authorities have gone bust, and some of them actually produce a year budget that indicates a lot of problem. Looking at our model, I know for sure that over the years, we have had good councillors and good officers who have understood what actually the people of Oxford needs and want, and be able to deliver the services to people. I feel our model and the 3 proposed that can achieve that. Also, on the resilience part of it, we have passed through a lot of things, COVID, and now we are in the cost of living crisis. All of that, we come out stronger because we understand the issues and we make the right decision. And therefore, I'm supporting the Greater Oxford and the 3 proposals. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cho. I was reflecting as I looked at my paper and the recommendations in front of us that the corporate priorities that we set ourselves as a council, I think are well met by this proposal. So just to remind you all, our corporate priorities are good affordable homes, strong fair economy, thriving communities, zero carbon Oxford, and a well-run council. And I feel really confident that our 3 unitary proposal is the best way of delivering on all of those priorities, which is exactly as it should be, because those are our corporate priorities, and therefore, you know, you would hope so. But I genuinely think that this is absolutely what this proposal does. I think we've had some really good contributions, so thank you all very much. Sorry, did someone? Linda, did you want to come back in? No, come back in. It's fine. Carry on. Before I sum up, you come back in.
Sorry, it was just, I wanted to add my thanks to the senior officers that my colleagues have given, but also Lucy Cherry is on the call. And no one's mentioned Lucy, and I just wanted to thank her for, for all the work she's done throughout the whole process, especially on the front line, talking to residents across the county. So thank you very much to everybody.
And that's absolutely appalling of me to have missed Lucy out of that, and I should say Claire as well. So thank you very much indeed, Lucy. Your contribution has been huge to this. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Linda, for prompting on that. Quite rightly so. I'm very glad you did. And I also did want to echo somebody, I can't remember which of it was who said it now. I think it was Ed actually. To all the other officers who've also just kept business as usual going on, because that has also been quite tricky when so much time has been spent pulling this proposal together. And also, I would like to say that I think it's really important that we have throughout this process also managed to continue to work in a really collegiate way with our partner councils, even when we are putting together proposals which are quite different to theirs. I would like to say a thank you to officers and members actually from across different councils for the fact that we have been able to work so well together, even under quite challenging circumstances at times. I think as Ed said back at the beginning, it is this proposal is about the opportunity for growth and ambition, and also for focusing on our challenges around our housing crisis. But it's also about making sure that we have proposals that work for every bit of the county, and I think it's about them being able to meet their own local challenges and the needs of their local residents as well. And I don't see in either of the other two proposals anything other than a continuation of the failed county towns policy, which we touched on earlier. And as Alex quite rightly said, it's, you know, that policy has just denied growth is happening. It's denied the fact that there is clearly a housing crisis in the city, which needs to be met in the city or near the city, unless you're just going to make a huge problem even worse in terms of congestion and commuting into Oxford. And you can't just make it go away. You can basically shrink growth maybe a little bit. You can, because I mean, certainly I think that our proposals will make for a stronger economy, and I think that's absolutely what we have said. But you won't stop it. You'll just make everyone's lives miserable, because that's what's happening at the moment, as people are having to commute every further and further distances in order to be able to get to the jobs and not live where they want to be living. So I think that's that is, you know, a really key part of our proposals. Right. We have in front of us three massive proposals. We are being asked to note and consider all three of them. I think we have had some discussion of the other two proposals, but we are also being asked to agree the Oxford City Council, that Oxford City Council's preferred LGR proposal is for the creation of the new 3 unitary councils covering Oxfordshire and West Berkshire as set out in Appendix 1. And obviously the report goes into the detail, as you would expect, of exactly how that's set out. And it also asks us to delegate authority to the Chief Exec and me to make any further minor amendments as we go through before submission to government. So is everyone happy to agree those recommendations? Thank you very much. And I know Ed would have voted to support it had he been here. but thank you very much. Okay, that is our business for today. Just checking, have we got, don't think we've got any minutes for this meeting, because that will come to the next meeting. So it's just falls to me to say the next scheduled meeting is the 19th of November. So see you all then, if not before. And thank you very much. And I will now close the meeting.